We're joined by Carol Walker from Birmingham again. Carol, can you throw any more light on what's going on in the Midlands?
Well, certainly we're expecting a result in about the next 5 minutes from Edgbaston, which could be a very interesting result indeed. We're hearing it's looking very positive indeed, nothing definite yet, but very positive indeed for Gisela Stewart for the Labour Party. Now, this is a seat that has been a Tory seat since 1922, used to be Dame Jill Knight's. Andrew Marshall now the candidate for the Tory party, but we're hearing that it could be very positive for Gisela Stewart for the Labour Party, and that result due in about the next 5 minutes.
She had a rather odd campaign because she was born German, wasn't she, and is married to an Englishman, and there was some talk about on the doorsteps people were saying, oh, you mustn't elect a German, and using rather rude a word about it.
Well, certainly, and I think there have been rumours that the Conservative Party were trying to exploit that. But I have to say that also the Labour Party have worked very hard indeed on the ground in this seat and in a number of others of these crucial West Midlands seats, which of course, as you've been hearing, as part of the key battleground. And the Labour Party have been working very hard to build up the support, and very hard throughout the day today to make sure that people actually go out and vote. And I'm sure that that must have helped to boost what we believe and expect to be a win for Labour here.
Carol Walker, thank you very much indeed. We're joined by William Hague now, the Secretary of State for Wales, who's at Conservative Party headquarters. Well, Mr Hague, people who might lead the Conservative Party have been breaking out and telling us what they think went wrong. What do you think went wrong?
Well, we've only got 4 results so far. We'll have to see how the rest of the results turn out. Clearly, they're not looking very good so far, but we'll have to see what happens with the rest of the results.
What do you think is to blame if the collapse of the Tory vote is as it seems? Is it divisions over Europe, or is it people just being fed up after 18 years of Conservative government?
Well, I think we've faced an opposition that has been prepared to say anything at all in order to get elected, and that has been a new phenomenon in this election. Even an opposition that has spoken some of the language of the Conservative Party in order to get elected. They have changed their image. We have yet to see whether they have actually changed their substance. Clearly, any appearance of division hasn't helped either. But I think the feeling of time for a change, which other people have referred to, has inevitably been difficult to combat. But we're proud of what we've achieved in this country over the last 18 years. If indeed we have lost the election, that doesn't mean we stop being proud of what we've achieved over the last 18 years. We have seen a significant change in the behaviour of the opposition.
Do you expect to be serving in a shadow cabinet led by John Major?
Well, I would hope so, but that would be up to him, of course. That is up to John Major, the leader of the Conservative Party.
After leading the Conservatives to what looks like the worst defeat since 1832, do you think he's in any position to go on leading them?
Yes, I have just been campaigning for weeks around the country, saying that he should be the Prime Minister of this country, and I don't regret a word of that. If I believe he should be the Prime Minister, I certainly believe he should be the leader of the Conservative Party.
Who let him down then in your party?
Well, as I say, I think the main factors at work have been a wider feeling in the country and a change in at least the image of the opposition in the country. But if people have let him down, then that is something that we have to look at over a longer period. I think we need a period of cool and calm reflection in the Conservative Party, if indeed the forecasts that we're hearing at the moment turn out to be correct.
Nicholas Winterton, you see, says that Kenneth Clarke was at fault and he lost the campaign.
Well, I don't think there's any point in apportioning blame around the party. We have to take a period of very cool and calm reflection. Of course, there are going to be lessons to be learned if indeed the forecasts that we have at the moment turn out to be correct. But that doesn't mean that we have a period of recrimination, and it doesn't mean that we stop being proud of what together we have achieved for this country, which is the best economic prospects in the lifetime of my generation. And the test of any Labour government would be whether they were still able to say that at the time of the next general election.
Michael Heseltine said that the electorate, just on the eve of the poll, would be walking to disaster if they voted Labour. Now, if they seem to have done it on the scale that the exit polls and the first results, it has to be said, are suggesting, do you think they slept-walked into this, despite everything that you said during the campaign? Do you think they just took no notice of what the Tories were saying?
Well, whether they went to sleep or awake, I certainly think that they would have gone on the road to disaster. I think the consequences of having a Labour government will become clear much faster than people think they might, if indeed that is what happens later this evening. I think it will be deeply damaging to this country, to its constitution, to its sovereignty, but that underlines the fact that the Conservative Party, if indeed, as I keep saying, these results turn out to be correct, must be instantly an effective opposition and must make sure that the probable follies of a Labour government in its early days would be exposed.
William Hague, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
William Hague, who might be the youngest challenger for the leadership, if there is a leadership battle. Sedgefield, and we're waiting for Tony Blair to arrive there at his count. Large crowd now gathered there. He had big crowds actually in the last 2 or 3 days of the campaign. He was a big crowd you probably saw in the marketplace. His father-in-law, the actor Tony Booth from Till Death Do Us Part, arrived at the count a moment ago. He's, I think, would admit that he was old Labour rather than new Labour. As an actor, you remember, he used to be seen reading Militant, which is very much not New Labour. And here is Mr. Blair. Cherie, and one of his sons there, and John Burton, his agent. Well, Mr. Blair is looking now like a man who knows he's won. For the first time since this long campaign started, you can see on his face a kind of confidence and exuberance. Cherie, his wife, beside him there, that this time Labour's cracked it and that he is about to become Prime Minister. No words at the moment from the man who has been described as a safe pair of lips to lead the Labour Party, and what we shall see is whether he's actually a safe pair of hands. Alastair Campbell on the left there, his press secretary, who's been conducting this very, very carefully calculated campaign. One of the interesting things about the whole Blair campaign and New Labour is the degree to which it has been disciplined. And of course it's one thing to keep your party under control and bludgeon them into submission. It's quite another thing to bludgeon the civil service and bludgeon the country into submission to your will as Prime Minister. We've only seen him in control of the party. We haven't seen him as a politician making difficult decisions under pressure. So the first big test will be in the weeks ahead, when he has to start actually acting and not speaking, as he's always said. There's a world of difference between deciding what to say and deciding what to do. His young son Ewan there, going into the count. The nearby seat of Houghton has been held, and we have the result: Houghton and Washington East. The new town of Washington is contained in this. Fraser Kemp, safe Labour seat, huge Labour vote, 76%, but the swing is the thing we want to see, and it's 9%. So once again, the swing pretty much in line. And Tony Blair now arrives inside the count, applauded by his own little group of party workers there. The teller's, of course, completely independent behind, mainly bank clerks and clerical workers who are paid to come here and get on with the job of the count itself. Well, a very informal scene. In a matter of hours, Tony Blair, as Prime Minister, will be taken over by the whole machinery of government and the list of decisions that he has to take. But that hasn't happened yet. Power doesn't pass until the Prime Minister goes to Buckingham Palace with his resignation to the Queen, and Tony Blair is summoned there sometime tomorrow, and then takes over the seals of office and can then start appointing his cabinet. But anyway, at the moment he's among friends in Sedgefield, where he's been the MP for a long time, unexpectedly leader of the party after John Smith's death, unexpectedly indeed the MP for Sedgefield as a result of John Burton's late last-minute intervention in 1983. So we'll go back there when we get the result. In the meantime, Jeremy.
David, well, I'm joined now by two of the shadow cabinet. Looks as if they're shortly going to be members of the real cabinet, Jack Straw and Robin Cook. Jack Straw, are you expecting to be Home Secretary?
Well, my answer to that is the same as the one you received from Gordon Brown about half an hour ago, is that we'll wait and see, when all of us would be delighted to serve in any position in a Tony Blair cabinet. It's a tremendous achievement if, as it appears to be, we are on course for a great victory, an achievement above all by Tony Blair.
But he can't sack the man who ran his campaign for the leadership, can he?
Well, it's entirely speculation by you, right, Jeremy. I'm sorry I can't hear you very well, by the way. But
let me ask you another question.
Please do.
If you really have won by something of landslide proportions, doesn't it indicate that you really didn't need to throw out a lot of the things you profess to believe in?
That we didn't, or that we did?
That you did not need to throw out as many of the policies as you did.
It's not a question of throwing out policies that we did not believe in. Our values have stayed the same. What has been crucial, however, and it's shown in the difference between today's result and that in 1992, was that we had to modernise the methods that the party was attached to. Now, that's the change that Tony Blair has managed to achieve, and it's a change which, by all the indications of the polls tonight, is one which is backed by a near majority, absolute majority of the British people.
And how long before we see child curfews, Mr. Straw?
Well, they are in the manifesto. They're called child protection orders. Tony Blair himself announced that in the first Queen's speech there would be a crime and disorder bill, and those will form part of that.
Right. Robin Cook, do you think your success, or apparent success, or incipient success this time, indicates that perhaps you could have won in 1992 had you done things like Jack Straw wanted to do, like chucking out Chook Clause 4?
Well, it'd be very nice to replay history, and perhaps we could go back to 1983 and decide how we could have won that one, Jeremy. But we're actually fighting the election in 1997, and I think you saw one of the reasons why we are winning, and winning so handsomely, earlier, just before you turned this interview, and that was the tremendously warm ovation which Tony Blair got on arriving at the Sedgefield camp. But he has led from the front, he has led a united party behind him, and he has offered Britain a leadership that Britain sorely needs.
How much do you not accept, though, that this was a case of the Conservatives losing it by being hopelessly divided rather than you winning it?
Oh, Jeremy, I think this is a time to be magnanimous. It would be churlish to deny the Conservative Party their part in our victory tonight. But it wasn't all down to the Conservative Party, far from it. One of the reasons why we are winning is that we are winning because we talked about the issues that affect the real families of Britain. The health service, the education service, our commitments to cut class sizes, to cut waiting lists, to cut the dole queues, to cut crime. They rang bells with the ordinary people out there, and that's why they've turned out in large numbers to vote for those policies.
And you reckon you will be able to be more radical in government than you've been during the campaign?
I think that once people see those policies put into action, they will recognise that it is going to create a Britain which is a fair society, which has an open democracy, and in which the economy is run to provide opportunity for the many, not privilege for the few. And yes, that's a radical vision.
Robin Cook and you, Jack Straw, thanks both very much. Thank you.
Well, we're joined now by Francine Stock, who's at the Royal Festival Hall. Francine, they were a bit squeamish about this. It's a celebration party, isn't it?
Well, it is a celebration party, and certainly within the last half hour or so, it has begun to sound like one. It was pretty quiet to start with. It kicked off at 11 o'clock. They're expecting up to about 1,800 guests, and we gather that Dareem will be playing later on, and indeed there's going to be disc jockey and music. And I must say that certainly the mood is becoming more buoyant by the moment. Choice of the Festival Hall, of course, is quite significant, as it was centrepiece of the Festival of Britain, one of the great dreams itself of the post-war Labour government.
Coming there later on tonight?
Sorry, David.
Is Tony Blair coming there later on tonight?
Indeed he is, yes. Obviously, after his own result, he'll then come down to London and will arrive here, and we're expecting that he will speak to people both outside and indeed inside the hall. And with me, I do actually have one of the early celebrants here at the Labour celebration, Richard Branson, Virgin Supremo. Good evening. Now, I must say, up until now, people have been saying that you've been sitting on the fence. You've talked to both sides. You appear to be still sitting on the fence the weekend. You jumped off it pretty smartly this evening. You were here at about 11:30.
Well, I still haven't sort of declared who I voted for, but I think Labour have many policies which we've supported, which we've come out and said that we do support. Tonight's an historic night, and they've been good enough to invite us and other people down, and we're here to wish them well and hope that they have a very successful 5 years in office. And I think they're going to need all the support they can get.
So it's a question of pragmatism rather than conviction in your case?
Well, I may or may not have voted for them, but as I've said in the last 2 or 3 weeks, there's many policies which I feel that they've got it right and where the Tories have got it wrong. I think the Tories got it right on things like privatisation. I think on issues like health, trying to stop kids from starting to smoke, trying to direct some of the lottery money to health and education. There's a whole list of things where I think Labour have got it right, and I would love to help them and give them their support.
But as a businessman, given that the indications are at the moment that Labour is going to have a substantial majority, do you have any concerns that they may be more radical in government than perhaps they have suggested in the campaign?
Well, I think everything they've said in the campaign is very good. I mean, they've talked about being a pro-competitive government. They're going to bring in pro-competition policies, maybe even be more pro-competitive than the Tories. They're not going to try to change some of the more radical moves that the Tories made, which I think were good for this country. But hopefully they will do things as a united party. The Tories were not united. And I think the country needs a party that is united. I think with Tony Blair having a big majority, he's got the mandate to go ahead and take this country forward the next 5 years. And it desperately, I think, needed that now.
Now, your organisation obviously prospered under the free enterprise of the Thatcherite and later the Majorite years. Will you have any words of concern? I mean, is there anything that you want to warn against?
Well, I think, as Tony Blair has said, that and he definitely does, he believes in free enterprise. He believes in entrepreneurism. Everything he has said, I think, there's very little one can question. He's got an incredibly difficult job because he's taken on the lowest inflation this country's had for years. He's taken on very low unemployment. He's taken on very high...
Those are good things, surely, to take.
No, he's taken on a record which is financially very good. And so to beat that is going to be very difficult. But I think the areas where hopefully he can win through is making decisions with slightly more of a heart than perhaps the Tories did in the past.
Richard Branson, thank you very much. Back to you, David.
Francine, thanks very much. We'll be down there for the festivities at the Festival Hall right through the night. And no doubt when those 1,800 or whatever it was people arrive, there'll be quite some scenes with Dee Ream playing. This is the result so far, with 6 results in. Conservatives have none, Labour on 6 at the moment. Those will stack up over the night, and the right hand, on your right-hand screen, you'll see the pluses or minuses of the gains or losses. We haven't yet had one of those, but we are waiting for Birmingham Edgbaston to come in. We think that will be the next marginal seat, which will give us an indication of how, in these key areas, Labour's doing. Barnsley Central, we have the result in. That's the 6th result that's come in. Barnsley Central, 24,500 Labour majority. This is the old headquarters of the NUM, still the headquarters when it was more powerful. A completely Conservative free zone, 70% Labour vote, and a swing of 7% from the Conservatives to Labour. Birmingham Edgbaston, the candidates there waiting for the count. Gisela Stewart, remember, for Labour, is hoping to take the seat from Andrew Marshall, the Conservative, the candidate there. James Dill Knight has retired after 30 years, and he's moved into the seat. Edgbaston is in the sort of leafy Birmingham suburbs. It includes the famous cricket ground and Birmingham University, an area which normally would be a very safe Conservative seat.
Not putting it very high.
Neil Hamilton arriving with his wife Christine at the count at Tatton.
National ones.
What happens in Tatton?
Good turnout.
And
Well,
she
we're not
talking
too
as
far away
ever?
From Wrexham,
Oh no, he is
if we
talking.
do as well as we did in Wrexham, we'll survive.
You mean just a 7% swing against you?
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty optimistic.
Who knows?
Well, we'll soon find out. Hang on. Contain
All right,
yourself.
thanks very much. We'll look forward to it very much.
Okay, bye.
Vivian White, our reporter down there at Tatton. And William Waldegrave, Chief Secretary of the Treasury at his count in Bristol West. This could be an anxious night for him. Let's go for the declaration from Birmingham Edgbaston.
Edgbaston constituency is as follows. Derek Lawrence Campbell, the British Democratic Party candidate, 443. James Young, known as Jock Gallagher, Liberal Democrat, 4,691. Andrew Marshall, the Conservative Party candidate, 18,712. Jonathan Paul Oakton, the Referendum Party candidate, 1,065. Gisela Stewart, the Labour Party, 23,000.
That tells it all, the smile on her face. This is a seat that's never fallen to Labour. And this is the Basildon of the 1997 election. There it is in Sedgefield. They're all applauding and waving their balloons at this first Labour gain of the night. Birmingham Edgbaston, Labour majority, 4,800 from a 5,000 Conservative majority last time. For Gisela Stewart.
Elected Member of Parliament for the Birmingham Edgbaston constituency.
And the swing, 10% from Conservative to Labour in Birmingham Edgbaston. There it is, the first Labour gain of the night.
I'd like to thank the people of Edgbaston for entrusting me with being their first ever Labour Member of Parliament. Britain has turned away from the Tories, but this is not a time to look back. Today we look forward to life with a new Labour government that can rebuild Britain as one nation. A new Labour government that will serve Britain in the interest of all the people and not just the privileged few. We have said in this campaign that Britain deserves better. The people have agreed. Now Labour must make sure that Britain really does get better. There's a lot to be done. We won't get Britain back on its feet next week or the week after. But Tony Blair will be starting the job first thing tomorrow morning. This result has set Britain on course for a brighter future. We will look back on May the 1st, 1997, as the day education became Britain's first priority, as the day we started a real attack on unemployment, and as the day the NHS was saved.
So there's the victor, the first victor of the night. We've had some more results come in. Let's see those. Labour holds in Manchester Blakely. The swing is what's interesting here. Again, 9% swing from Conservative to Labour. Bootle, very depressed, run-down part of the country. Labour, very safe seat for them with a majority of 28,000 this time. Slightly smaller swing and a very low turnout there. 66% turnout. Now we go to Rushcliffe, where Fred Emery has the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Kenneth Clarke, with him. Fred.
Yes, well, David, with me is the Chancellor, still the Chancellor for another day, of course.
Certainly.
Waiting here for his count, and he's also waited to give any interviews here until at least there was one Conservative seat. With the loss of Edgbaston there, do you really accept the game is up?
It looks as though I'm going to be sharing the disappointment of everybody else who's been working for the Conservative Party in the last few weeks. So it's ever more likely as the minutes go by that we have lost, that the end of 18 years of, I think, very successful Conservative government have come, and people have chosen to go to a new Labour government, and we have to see what new Labour is really like in office.
Why do you think it was when, as Chancellor, either by luck or judgment, you actually had some success with the economy, which normally decides elections?
Well, I think in this election, undoubtedly, there's been far too little about the economy and our economic prospects, far too much about Europe. But controlling the agenda is very difficult in modern elections. It veered about. Some days it, I think, became positively frivolous. But everybody involved in the election, including the journalists who report it, play a part in that. And had we had more on the economy, and a little less on Europe and a lot less on sleaze, I think we might have done better.
You probably know already that at least one of your former colleagues, and others, of course, already in the Conservative press, actually blame you single-handedly for losing this election on the grounds that you ruled out this option of ruling out joining the single currency. Right. And Nick Budgeon, it wasn't Nick Budgeon, excuse me, it was Nicholas Winterton said that you'd be remembered or reviled in history.
Well, that wouldn't be Nick Budgeon, that would be Nick Winterton. The position is, I think most people who work for the Conservative Party, particularly the voluntary workers, would say they hope the parliamentary party in the next parliament behaves rather more sensibly than the parliamentary party did sometimes in the last parliament. And we do need to have to get together as a sensible, united party in order to rebuild from what looks like quite a serious redress. The idea that almost 50% of the public are voting Labour because we are not right-wing and Eurosceptic enough is a theory that Nick Middleton can no doubt cling to. I can tell you now, and you could tell me which newspapers will tell everybody that tomorrow, but I think that generally most of the general public will regard that as rather unlikely. But for us to fall to mutual recriminations at any time will be folly. For people within 2 hours of the polls closing to start going into mutual recriminations is extreme folly. And I do think the party needs to compose itself, lose with dignity, look at itself and decide how to make itself more appealing and how to be a good opposition.
We'll come back to you later, Chancellor. Thank you very much.
The result from Portsmouth North, Peter Griffiths, the Conservative.
72. Peter John Coe, UK Independence Party, 298. Sean Bonham Carter Evely, the Referendum Party candidate, 1,757. Peter Harry Steve Griffiths, Conservative Party candidate, 17,016 votes. Sydney Norman John Rapson, the Labour Party candidate, 21,339. Stephen Roy Sollett, Liberal Democrat, 4,788. And I declare that Sydney Norman John Rapson has been duly elected to serve as the Member of Parliament for the Portsmouth North constituency.
Well, there is a very good result for Labour. Their second gain of the night. Peter Griffiths, once dubbed the parliamentary leper by Harold Wilson for a racist campaign he fought in the Midlands, has lost this seat, and the swing is a huge 14%.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's traditional that I give thanks to a number of people, but clearly tonight is a momentous occasion for us in the Labour Party in Portsmouth. We see the dawn of a new beginning at last for a better country. May I thank, therefore, the police, the returning officers and their staff, done a magnificent job today, the campaign team, and I'll say more about that later.
Well, he's a local Portsmouth councillor and about to embark on a formal speech of thanks, unlike the one we heard from Birmingham, which was a fairly feisty defence of Labour. News that Labour claiming they're going to take Crosbury, Tories in Liverpool, Wavertree say they're going to be struggling to save their deposit, and the Liberal Democrats look as though they may lose Rochdale to Labour. But at this point, we've had 12 results in. Let's have a look at our forecast. Peter.
Right, now here is the blue mountain that Labour had to climb. All these blue seats in the last Parliament, And how many have declared? Let's have a look and see how many have declared. Here we're looking now at the results in so far. Most of them grey, undeclared. There's Birmingham Edgbaston. Number 82 has gone for the Labour Party. So it's again way beyond the winning post, if you remember, that Labour had to get to. So now let's look at our swingometer. Here it is. These are the blue Conservative seats vulnerable to a swing along this red arc here. And here is the average swing so far. That's the 4.5% Labour have got to reach to get an overall majority. But the average swing is twice that, way beyond there. Something just over 9.5% is the average swing in the seats so far. That would see Labour with a majority of something like 100. But the Birmingham Edgbaston swing is a little bit higher than that. And the Portsmouth North swing is a whole 14%. So you can see that in the seats the Conservatives are defending, things look much better than they look in the safer Labour seats. So on the basis of all that, let's just first of all look at what would happen if we forecast, so we project here very quickly for you, just what would happen on the basis of that average swing in all the seats. Harry Ashton with 25, Mr Major with 227, and Mr Blair unquestionably there with 379. But now we can show you, on the basis of the seats that matter, the Conservative seats, biasing our forecast towards the seats in which this election will be decided, seats like Portsmouth North and Edgbaston, here is our first forecast. 41 Liberal Democrats, 176, rather fewer for John Major, 415 Labour MPs under Tony Blair, a Labour majority of 171 in the new Parliament. David.
Tony King, what do you make of that? That's a sensational result if that forecast is borne out.
Oh, absolutely amazing. One of the things that's striking about the conversations that have taken place so far is all this talk of time for a change, as though all that had happened is that the clock had run out for the Conservative government. One of the things I think the Tories are going to have to take on board is that they didn't lose this election simply because they'd been in power for 18 years. They lost the election because of the way they comported themselves in power.
Okay, let's hear now from Gisela Stewart, who was the first victor of the night for Labour. She's with Carol Walker at Birmingham Edgbaston.
Yes, Gisela Stewart, congratulations. Why do you think you won this seat, which has been a Conservative seat since 1922? Was it just that people were fed up with the Tories?
No, I think it went much deeper. It was a kind of total disillusionment, but also they had lost trust. And I see the Labour victory as one of an opportunity to restore that trust between the people and politicians.
We're looking there at predictions of a Labour majority of 171 seats in Parliament. What sort of a Labour government do you think that would be?
I think what that means is it allows us to put into practice our plans for restoring the NHS, for making education our first priority, and all the other reforms we are planning to put into place. We can actually put them into place very effectively.
There's going to be a great deal of expectations on people like yourself, aren't there?
Well, but we also will have a very large number of women in Parliament, and this is one of the most exciting aspects of the new Parliament as far as I'm concerned.
Gisela Stewart, thanks very much indeed. That's Gisela Stewart here, the winner at Edgbaston.
Good, well, let's have a look at some results we've had in keeping track of this sensational victory for the Labour Party. Birmingham, Ladywood, Claire Short, one of the most popular and outspoken members of the Shadow Cabinet, and she has a swing of a more modest 5%, and a very low turnout, 54% turnout in Birmingham, Ladywood. Extraordinarily low. Ashton-under-Lyne, Labour hold that seat. Robert Sheldon, his majority 22,000. A biggish swing there in Ashton-under-Lyne. He's been 32 years as an MP. He's chairman of the Public Accounts Committee there. And Worley, another safe Labour seat. They get 63% of the vote here. Conservatives in second place, and the swing again 10.5%. The third Labour gain of the night in Crosby, the seat Shirley Williams once held for the SDP, and Sir Malcolm Thornton defeated here on a huge swing, 18% swing. Next door to Bootle, that in the affluent part of the northwest, should be safe for the Conservatives, falls on an 18% swing from Conservative to Labour. And incidentally, the Liberal Democrat vote goes down and may well have helped make that swing as big as it is. Liberal Democrats voting for Labour in order to get the Conservatives out. So that's the third Conservative defeat of the night. In Brent, Dr. Rhodes Boyson, Sir Rhodes Boyson, the former headmaster, looking a bit worried there in Brent. disconsolate figure. Norwich North, we're expecting a Labour gain up there. Norwich North is a fairly tight marginal. People crowded round anxiously. This is a very bad moment of the night. Just after midnight, a lot of seats being declared in the next couple of hours. Sir James Goldsmith, who founded the Referendum Party, arriving looking extremely cheerful at Putney. And he spent a very large amount of money all over the country to try and get a referendum party going which would allow us to vote on whether we should or shouldn't stay in the European Union. Michael Burke.
So James, early days yet, of course, but are you disappointed by your results so far?
No, you've got to understand, what are we? We're a pressure group. We didn't seek power for ourselves at any time. Our purpose was to break the unanimity of silence that existed and to get a debate on Europe. We managed to obtain that debate. Europe is #1 issue in this election. It's become the European election. All the parties who refused referenda to start off with have become referendum parties. The Conservatives send out documents saying, we are the referendum party. Mr. Blair writes in The Sun, we are the referendum party. Mr. Ashdown says we're the referendum party. We're all referendum parties. And they have all rejected the Euro-Federalist policies, and they have all committed themselves to rejecting the single European state.
But on that basis, does it matter to you whether your candidates get votes at all?
Well, it matters to me only in this respect, that we want to have a movement so as to make certain that the politicians who have made these promises, who have rejected Euro-federalism, and who have now said they're going to be against a federal state, that they respect that they give us the referenda, and that they remember that none of the parties have a mandate from this election to take us into a federal Europe, because they have all campaigned against it. And if they don't respect their commitments, we want to have people up and down the country who are angry and committed to ensuring that those politicians respect their words.
And your personal chances here, have you any idea how they go?
Extremely low.
Thanks very much indeed. See you later on.
Well, that's the first frank remark we've heard from a candidate tonight as they wait for their results to come through. The Liberal Democrats have pretty much conceded they've lost Rochdale to Labour, or it looks as though they have. But on the other hand, they appear to have had Sheffield Hallam conceded to them by the Tories. So Liberal Democrats look as though they've taken Sheffield Hallam. Let's have a look at 3 more results. Again, we're looking at the scale of this victory. Eccles, 11% swing from Conservative to Labour. This is in the Salford part, just to the west of Manchester. And Salford itself, a 9% swing. Hazel Blears takes this. And Worsley, safe Labour seat south of Bolton, again an 8% swing. All the time the swing, even at 8%, double what they needed to get an overall majority for Labour. So, Peter, how are these marginals turning out at the moment? I mean, we've got them moving a bit, but there's some... I mean, that 18% one is extraordinary.
Quite extraordinary. Look, here is our swingometer with all the old seats coloured up in blue for Conservative over here, red for Labour over here. Now, watch which ones have actually declared. Here we go. I'm going to press my little button now. There we are. They've flashed up, and there are the safe Labour ones declaring for Labour. There's Birmingham, Edgbaston. There's Portsmouth North. And there's Crosby. See what swings it would require. 10.5% for Crosby, 9% for Portsmouth, 5% for Birmingham, Edgbaston to go. But now let's bring back all the undeclared seats now, all the undeclared red and blue seats, and see what the swing in those 3 marginals is looking like. Here it goes, turning an awful lot of other blue seats red as well. This is what's going to happen in these vital marginal seats if these 3 are typical. Something like 12%, and in Crosby, the furthest one here, it was 18%. It's off the end here somewhere. So let's just tip up now and see what the 12%, the rough average there, would sort out for us. And you can see that's why we were forecasting something like 150, but it's moving up all the time. Our forecast will be changing within minutes. David.
Peter, thank you very much. Let's now hear from John Simpson, who's with Alastair Campbell. John.
Well, David, a moment or two ago, about half an hour ago actually, Tony Blair came here. He wouldn't say anything, but with us at the moment for an informal chat, I'm told, is Alastair Campbell, his press spokesman. Alastair, you've won, haven't you?
Well,
Mr. Blair's constituency is not yet declared, but I think we're having a pretty good night.
I mean, there's Peter Snow saying possible majority of 171.
Well, I would doubt that, but I think it's fair to say we've had a very good campaign and we're having a very good night.
Well, I mean, 171 is a bit more than.
Well,
very good.
I would doubt we get a majority of 171, but it's quite clear we've had a very good night.
Can I tempt you to saying how much?
No.
But I mean, it's going to be substantial.
Well, it looks like we've had a good night.
It's going to be a problem, though, isn't it? All governments with big majorities have problems.
Well, I think if you don't mind, we'll stick on one night and we'll get through tonight, which seems to be a success, and then we'll think about whatever problems there may lie ahead.
Why, though, do you think you won? What was it about the campaign? Did you do so well? Did the Conservatives do so badly? What was it?
Well, I don't know whether the campaign in the end made that much difference. Maybe people just made up their minds, but I think the Conservatives certainly made a mistake in trying to target Tony in the way that they did, because that was a battle they were always going to lose. I mean, people know the strength of character that is there and the vision and the purpose, and that came out over a long campaign. I think the long campaign rebounded against them. I think we had a great campaign at every level. I thought Tony was on great form. I thought John Prescott had a brilliant campaign. Gordon Brown running things from Millbank, the whole Millbank Tower operation under Peter Mandelson, and the integration of the Shadow Cabinet as well. And I think really important as well is our organisation on the ground. We have got fantastic organisation on the ground now, and the truth is we've supplanted the Conservatives as the professional party in British politics.
Well, it doesn't sound very much like bitter introspection there. Back to you, David.
Thanks, John. They sound very downbeat, Labour, tonight, as though they weren't quite sure. Perhaps they know something that we don't know, but I can't believe it. But very cautious about acknowledging any victory at the moment. No sign of exuberance. Liz Lynn has conceded, incidentally, that she's lost Rochdale to Labour. We haven't got the result out yet. It'll be some time before it comes. We've got some more results in. Let's just have a look at those. Tyne Bridge, 11% swing. This is a Labour hold, of course. Safe seat. Barnsley West and Penistone, again, Labour hold. A smaller swing there, 5%, where Arthur Scargill lives. Oldham West and Royton, Michael Meacher, who may or may not be in the Labour cabinet. He's on the Shadow Cabinet. There's been some doubt about whether he'll survive in his job as Environment Secretary. One of the few people who actually served in the Wilson and the Callaghan governments as a minister. 12% swing, very big swing. We go down to Yeovil now,
Carry forward with our policies for health and
Paddy
education.
Ashton is
We'll use those for the next
giving an
month.
interview
Make sure
again.
that that's what we deliver.
The exit polls are looking and suggesting, and so are the early results, that it will in fact be a landslide victory for Labour.
You really can't tell, and I think we should wait till the British public's votes are counted rather than the exit poll, interesting though they are. Thank you all very much
Final
indeed.
question, are you getting any reports of your own party's performance from
As
your
far
agent?
as I can tell, it looks to me as though we're going to be on a good...
It seems a statement every half hour from Mr. Ashdown at the moment. Well, we've now had 20 results in, 22 results in actually as I speak, and this is how things stand. Based on that, the biggest ever Labour majority of 193 after 23 results now in is what we're saying just after 12:30. And this is the vote on which it's based. Labour running now at 45%, Conservatives 31%, Liberal Democrats 17%, others on 7%. It's a slight increase in the Conservative vote, a couple of percent or so from what we first predicted. Labour gains in Birmingham, Edgbaston, Portsmouth North and Crosby. Those are the three that have come through so far. The Shadow Chancellor Gordon Brown, it's not just a rejection of the Conservatives, it's about New Labour and a new type of politics. Kenneth Clarke, the Chancellor, had we had more on the economy and a little less on Europe, a little less on sleaze, then we might have done better. Sir James Goldsmith of the Referendum Party speaking in Putney. None of the parties have a mandate from this election to take us into Europe because they've all campaigned against it. And this is how the news has been coming through to us. Well, they're supporters of Liz Lynn in Rochdale being comforted. Obviously very upsetting. There's Liz Lynn herself comforting one of her own supporters in Rochdale, where she's conceded that she's lost the seat to Labour. The first editions of the newspapers are coming through. The youngest Prime Minister since 1801, says the Express. Biggest turnaround by voters since 1945. Tories head for greatest defeat ever. It's Blair. The Guardian, Labour's victory charge. The Telegraph, Blair set for huge majority. The Mail, a landslide for Labour. The Mirror, Blair heading for landslide poll victory. And I don't know why, but I don't happen to have a copy of The Sun here, which was the newspaper that, surprisingly, Rupert Murdoch's paper came out in favour of Tony Blair. But I do have the Morning Star. Real work starts now as Labour cites victory, the left says. Peter.
David, we're going to open the doors of the House of Commons now and see what the new shape of the House of Parliament will be. On the opposition benches, Mr Major with, how many MPs? 151, fewer than they've had since the war. Next door to him, Paddy Ashdown, his best hopes realised with no less than 49 Liberal Democrats, 28 the others, 28. Here is the winning post that Mr Blair needs to get through, is to get an overall majority. Are now rushing towards it, all those red figures for the Labour MPs who are now way over the victory, the winning post, 431 of them, 431 of them. You subtract the opposition total from that and you get Labour with a majority of 203, David.
Thanks very much, Peter. And let's now go down to Basildon. We were hoping to join Mark Mardell there. This is one of the target seats for Labour that they'll very easily get, in truth, on these sort of swings. 2.19% is all they needed. Mark, can you fill us in on what's going on there? No, I think you can't. We just see the publicity for Basildon. Anyway, that was the seat that was marked the victory last time round, and we're told it's a very big victory for Labour that's going to come through here when the returning officer declares. Yes, Mark, I can hear you. Far away.
Yeah, jolly good. Because the reason that we're looking at the stage is because they're actually about to come onto the stage at the moment and hear the declaration. But what we're hearing is that Essex man and Essex woman have gone across to Labour in quite a big way. When David Amess won last time, there was a majority of around 1,500. We think that Labour are going to get a majority of 10,000. Quite an incredible result here, we believe, tonight. And they are actually just coming onto the stage at the moment, and we'll be able to hear from them, the returning officer, very shortly indeed, I think, David.
Of course, these boundaries, I haven't gone through the details of it, they've all changed a bit, and David Amess left because the Basildon constituency's boundaries were altered, as 2/3 of the constituencies have been altered at these elections. Trying to get them all to pretty much the same size, and it reduced the potential for the Conservatives, or he thought it would, and in fact I think in theory it didn't, and he moved off anyway to Southend.
I, being the returning officer for the Basildon constituency, hereby give notice that the total number of votes given for each candidate at the election was as follows: John Charles Barron, Conservative, 16,366. Lindsay Granshaw, Liberal Democrat, 4,608. Craig Barry Robinson, Referendum Party, 2,462. Angela Evans Smith, Labour, 29,646. And that Angela Evans Smith has been duly elected to serve as member for the said constituency.
So Basildon deserts the Conservatives and goes Labour, and just look at the swing in Basildon. 15% swing from Conservative to Labour in Basildon. Angela Smith takes it.
The Basildon result was announced in 1992. But tonight's spectacular result makes it clear that 18 years of Tory government has now ended. This is the beginning of a new era in British politics. In Basildon and in Britain, Labour has come home. We'll now have a Labour government concerned for the many, not just a few. Government has confidence in the future that's not lost in the past, and a government that believes that Britain deserves better.
Gibson,
Norwich
Ian,
North result being
Labour.
declared here without the candidates.
27,346. Hood, James Anthony,
Socialist Labour.
495. Kinghorn, Robert Richard Francis,
Conservative.
17,876. Marks, Dennis Howard,
Legalise cannabis.
512. Mills, Diana Betty Linda,
Natural Law Party.
100. And Young, Paul Robert Malcolm,
Liberal Democrat.
6,951. There were 165 spoilt ballot papers. I therefore declare Ian Gibson elected to serve as Member of Parliament for Norwich North.
A 10.6 swing, 11% swing in Norwich North gives that seat to Labour. Dunfermline East, Gordon Brown has won his seat and is speaking. Let's hear him.
All those who have counted the votes this evening, the police and everybody in the Council in Fife, for the very fast and efficient way that this poll has been conducted this evening. I want also to thank my fellow candidates for the keenly fought contest that we have enjoyed and for the sporting way that this contest has been conducted. I want to thank particularly those people in the Labour Party who not only during this contest but over the last 3 contests have helped me and helped the Labour Party achieve this great result this evening. This result, which is now being repeated in almost every corner of the country, is not just a verdict against Conservative rule. It is a clear and decisive endorsement of the desire of the people of this country for a new politics that breaks free of the old divisions, for the unity of a country that can tackle the real social problems in our midst, and for a government that will equip this country for the great challenges of the future, from a platform of stability and investment, tackling the huge challenges that every modern industrial country faces. For 18 years, I believe the people of this constituency and the people of Britain have yearned for a government that is on their side. And if the verdict of the people is as it looks round the country this evening, then I believe that under Tony Blair's magnificent leadership, the Labour Party is now ready to rebuild the bond of trust between the British people and their government. And I look forward to the days ahead when we can begin as a Labour Party.
So the new Chancellor of the Exchequer and Nick Budgeon's seat in Wolverhampton South West being declared.
I declare that the total number of votes given for each candidate at this election was as follows. Nicholas William Budgeon,
Conservative,
19,539. Matthew Roger Green,
Liberal Democrat,
4,012. Michael Stephen Hyde,
Liberal,
713. Jennifer Grace Jones,
Labour,
24,657. And I declare that Jennifer Grace Jones has been elected Member of Parliament for this constituency.
Wolverhampton South West, Enoch Powell's old seat and Nick Budgeon's seat, ever since 1974, falls to Labour. Big majority, 5,000, a swing of 10%. Wolverhampton South West goes to Labour.
Thank you. This is a wonderful result, it really is. It's beyond my wildest dreams, I have to be honest. It was achieved through a great deal of hard work on behalf of myself, my agent and the campaign team. And I thank them all for the hard work that they have put in to achieve this result. I also thank my...
There is a recount in Torbay where Michael Allison is defending his seat against, we think, a Liberal Democrat challenge. And Stirling, interestingly, is reported as too close to call. Rupert Allison, I should have said. Stirling is too close to call. Michael Forsyth, Secretary of State, defending there, and that might be rather good news for him because it would fall on a very small swing against him. Liberal Democrats have gained Southport, as we reported a little while ago they were likely to do. Matthew Banks, the Conservative, is out, and Ronnie Fern, who nobody thought would take it, he's a former pantomime Dane, the Liberal Democrat Dame, and the Liberal Democrats themselves didn't think that he'd take it, but anyway, he has, and his majority is 6,000. He's had that seat before. Now, Peter, let's have a look, shall we, at the battleground?
Terrifying sight for the Conservatives, David. That's where Labour and the Liberal Democrats had to reach, Loughborough. That would have been a Labour majority. Here are the results in so far. Colouring up the seats, how much of it's staying blue, right the way across here into the 5th, 6th, 7th column. Crosby's gone red. We've got no blue on the battleground at all in the results in so far. Let's forecast the way they're going to go on the basis of the swings in all these important critical seats that we're going to decide it. Look at all the gold and yellow for SNP as well as red for Labour that's going up those first 4 columns, and the 5th and the 6th, and largely up the 7th as well. Now, the thing to do is to bunch them all together so that we get a clear picture of how far Labour is going to get beyond the winning post. They're filling 3, 4, 5 and a half, 5 3/4 columns. The rest of it is totally full of Liberal Democrat potential gains, forecast gains, and then the SNP going right off the top of our battleground. Now, that will mean, if that's anything like the way it's going to go, and now, of course, we are pretty certain of our forecast. We've got enough results in to be pretty certain it's going to be a landslide for Mr. Blair. Just where is he now? Let's go into number 10, open the door, and see how securely he will be in number 10. But there's no question about this. At least 5, certainly the full 5 years if he wants to. 191 majority forecast for Labour. David.
The man who helped devise that victory has won in Hartlepool, again with a big swing, 11%, and is speaking at the moment.
With very many others in our party, for 10 years, to arrive at the point at which the people of Britain feel able to put their trust and their faith once again in a Labour government, and that is what has happened today. And I know why they've done it. They've not only turned their back on the drift and the dogma and the divisions of the Tory years, they have voted Labour because they like New Labour, they like what they stand for, they like our courage, they like our confidence, they like our convictions, and they like us to govern this country for the many and not just the few.
The first London seat to declare, Battersea in South London.
Democrat, 3,482. Linton Martin,
Conservative seat this,
Labour
at the
Party,
moment.
24,000. And 47. Marshall Joseph, Rainbow Dream Ticket Party, 127. Slater Mark, Referendum Party, 804. And that Martin Linton has been duly elected to serve as the member for Battersea.
Guardian journalist Martin Linton defeats John Bowis, the health minister, junior health minister here, with a big swing. 10%. First London result and a loss for the Tories. Portsmouth South.
Liberal Democrat, 20,421.
That's Mike Hancock, the Liberal Democrat, who's taken this seat.
David John Patterson Martin, the Conservative Party candidate, 16,094. John Christopher Thompson, the Liberal Party candidate, 184. William Arthur Trend, the Natural Law Party, 140. Christopher Gregory Trim, the Referendum Party candidate, 1,629. And I declare that Michael Thomas Hancock has been duly elected to serve as the Member of Parliament for the Portsmouth South constituency.
He used to be Labour, he became SDP, he took the seat at the by-election, lost it again, and now he holds Portsmouth South.
Lord Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I have to thank all of the team who've worked so wondrously well, not over the 6 weeks of this
We have the Sedgefield declaration, Tony Blair's declaration.
I, Norman Vaux, being the acting returning officer for the Sedgefield constituency, hereby give notice that the total number of votes given for each candidate at the election held on Thursday, 1st May 1997 was as follows. Ronald Walter Alexander Leslie Beadle, Liberal Democrat, 3,050. Anthony Charles Linton Blair, the Labour Party candidate, 33,526. Ladies and gentlemen, can I read the other ones out, please? Brian Gibson, Socialist Labour Party, 474. Miriam Hall, the Referendum Party candidate, 1,683. Elizabeth Mary Alice Pittman, the official Conservative Party candidate, 8,383. And I do hereby declare that Anthony Charles Linton Blair has been duly elected to serve as Member of Parliament for the Sedgefield constituency.